What is relevant and necessary is the careful sharing of information that Caucasian Europeans have no more a monopoly on human progress and scientific development than do Black Africans, who obviously pioneered and contributed significant human progress before Europeans had emerged from the period of their pre-technological development. In ancient and contemporary times, people of various races and tribes have contributed to the advancement of humanity on this planet. It is the simple inclusion of this fact so that children of various tribes who currently exist in a European-dominated society can be included in the collective human experience and not accept the exclusive praise of the European tribe as the developers of the planet. It is this inclusion that gives the African American tribe information that permits them to restore contact with their tribal ancestral self. It is the inclusion that gives the African tribe information that permits them to restore contact with their tribal ancestral self. It is the inclusion that gives the African European tribe information that permits them to restore contact with their tribal ancestral self. It is the inclusion that gives the African Australian tribe, the African Chinese tribe, the African Indian tribe, the African tribe wherever you are on the face of the planet, that gives you information that permits you, even the African brothers and sisters in so like the New Zealands and the Fijis and all those kinds, and the Melanesians and all those kinds of people. Yeah, it is this information that permits you, all right, to restore contact with your tribal ancestral self. Now, Black scholars from the time of Carter G. Woodson, who wrote The Miseducation of the Negro, may you rest in peace, may you rest in power, and including contemporary scholars such as Molefi Asante, one of our master teachers, Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, may you rest in peace, may you rest in power, one of our master teachers, Asa G. Hilliard III, one of our master teachers, may you rest in peace, may you rest in power, Dr. John Henry Clark, may you rest in peace, may you rest in power, one of our master teachers, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, may you rest in peace, may you rest in power, one of our master teachers, and others have simply argued for the need of African people to be included in the history of civilization. We cannot expect African Americans to operate at full efficiency, which is what I'm arguing for. All of us as African people on the face of this planet, regardless of where you are, we need to come to terms with the reality so that we can operate or begin to operate at full efficiency, so that we can begin to solve some of the problems that we have. We cannot expect African Americans to operate at full efficiency so long as their educational experience teaches the tribal history of their historical oppressors and systematically excludes their contributions as if nothing of value ever came out of Africa and from Black lands. The irony is that this unnecessary fear that Africans will write Europeans out of history, as the Europeans have done to Africans, simply reflects their recognition of the importance of quote-unquote tribal history as the mechanism by which a people will know themselves. Your tribal ancestral self is required if you want to know who you are, or at least knowledge of your tribal ancestral self is required if you want to know who you are. With no evidence beyond the projection of their own conduct, European critics assume that Africans will systematically distort history not only for the corrective telling of their own story, but will necessarily exclude the contributions of others. Could it be that the Europeans fear that their children will be reduced to servants if they are deprived of good information and inspiration about their tribe, as has been the case for the children of Africans, deprived of knowledge of their African tribal self? Could it be? Could it be this fear? Well, one of the things, one of our master teachers, James Baldwin, will, I think in one of his, one clip that I saw online where he was saying that you have to remember that Africans and Black people are just like everyone else, okay? So we have emotions and we feel some type of way just like everyone else, and we do things just like everyone else, okay? However, when we also read the works of some of our other master teachers who are saying that, and I'm not saying that James Baldwin is wrong, you know, James Baldwin is very apt, and he spoke to us at a particular time where we needed to hear what he had to say, and his words still ring true today. Okay, so this is not trying to bring some kind of division or whatever. James Baldwin is a master teacher for myself as an African-centered person. Even though he's Black American, left America, went to France, his work is invaluable to me. Okay, however, also, because the African education system is built on the development of the soul, or the soul as a core, and that is also part of our developmental process, that may explain also why maybe Africans haven't retaliated per se, because maybe militarily speaking we might not be in a position to retaliate, but Africans haven't retaliated in the way, it's not to say that we cannot retaliate even if we're not militarily equals, quote unquote, but that's not what the point is. But it's something to bear in mind. I do think about. So these are two thoughts that I hold in my head where, yeah, we're just like everyone else. Okay, if we get angry, we get angry. We'll do what we need to do. Dr. Clark will tell us that Africans have, like, for example, he spoke about the OJ case, and he said that, even all people have killing styles. He talks about, cultural styles of killing. And he was making a joke to say that if you anger an African or a Black man, they probably want to kill you just there straight away. However, if a couple of days passes and you see him, he's probably like, what? Oh, yeah, that was just then. So all groups of people react to things differently or behave differently. Okay, and everyone has an optimum or efficient way of behaving, and because their ancestors have worked and honed these behaviors or styles of existence for a very long time. Okay, so they know how to do the way they do things. I don't know if I'm waffling now, but anyways, let me just get back into it. I'm going to stop this waffle. But James Baldwin and of course Dr. Naeem Akbar, as well as other master teachers, give us a lot of food for thought. Okay, it's not an either or type thing, it's an either and. So I take on these things, and I can take on both realities of the fact that yes, Africans are just like everyone else, and we do retaliate and we do things just like everyone else, as well as also understanding that there is an aspect to ourselves that is unlike any other group of people, and so therefore we have to look at those aspects also very closely to better understand who we are. Okay, let's carry on. The absence of information. Have I read this? No, I think I've already read that part. Yes, no, I'm saying what I was saying. Black scholars from the time of Carter G. Woodson, including contemporary scholars such as Molefi Asante, Yosef Buchanan, Asa Hilliard, John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, who are all master teachers, and others, have simply argued for the need of African people to be included in the history of civilization. We cannot expect African Americans to operate at full efficiency so long as their educational experience teaches the tribal history of their historical oppressors and systematically excludes their contributions as if nothing of value ever came out of us or ever came out of Africa and from Black lands and Black peoples. The irony is that this unnecessary fear that Africans will write Europeans out of history, as the Europeans have done to Africans, simply reflects their recognition of the importance of tribal history as the mechanism by which a people will know themselves. Your tribal ancestral history is required for you to know who you are. With no evidence beyond the projection of their own conduct, European critics assume that Africans will systematically distort history, not just distort history, but systematically. European critics assume that Africans will systematically distort history, not only for the corrective telling of their own story, but will necessarily exclude the contributions of others. Could it be that the Europeans fear that their children will be reduced to servants if they are deprived of good information and quote-unquote inspiration about their tribe, as has been the case for the children of Africans deprived of knowledge of their African tribal self? He asks. As is evident from the educational system of other peoples around the globe, knowledge of one's particular tribal self does not preclude knowledge of other tribes, or we don't just exclude other people because we are telling knowledge about ourselves, nor does it require other tribes to cease to study their own story. As I have discussed above, information is only one form of instruction that restores the awareness of the tribal self. The other educational technique that must be explored is ritual. Ritual incorporates pageantry, costumes, music, dance, ceremony, and repetition. The information that is transmitted is on an emotional and spiritual plane, and not in the tangible and concrete way that people are told about their heritage. Now this is key. Now we're going into new dimensions and new territories here, man. This is key. As I have discussed above, information is only one form of instruction that restores the awareness of the tribal self. Just one form. The other educational technique that must be explored is ritual. Ritual incorporates pageantry, costumes, music, dance, ceremony, and repetition. Now we know, let's say we take pageantry, pageantry, Miss World, pageantry, okay, beautiful women. Costumes, video girls, music, dance moves, ceremony, it's usually a ceremony in these music videos and stuff, hip-hop music videos, Afrobeats, all these kinds of things, and repetition, ceremony and repetition, okay? So it says that ritual is a form of education, and we know how music has been hijacked by a specific group of people who we cannot name, but you know who I'm talking about, who Kanye West was recently or run into, okay? And a lot of people run into these people. But anyways, we know a particular group of people who control the music industry, and they have used the music, which is something that is culturally relevant to us, and something that belongs to us, okay? They have used that to absolutely just destroy our minds, destroy any kind of self just awareness, or diverted us away from our self-awareness, okay? And this happened when I was a teenager, even pre-teenage, post-teen, and it will continue to happen up until we take responsibility for these things, okay? Anyways, let's go on. Ritual, the information that is transmitted is on an emotional and spiritual plane. Okay, so music is spiritual, and not in the tangible and concrete way that people are told about their heritage. So they are able to, quote unquote, remember the tribal ancestral part of the self by feeling as the ancestors felt, and knowing their experiences by the ritualistic or symbolic reliving of some aspect of their experience. And for example, if you read the book They Came Before Columbus by our master teacher, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, his narrative style is just fantastic, where he could literally transport you back to that place, okay? So there's so much to know and there's so much to learn, okay? So I hope these videos are making you, or at least making you consider or reconsider getting back in touch with your African self, or knowing more about your African self, or even finding rituals that affirm the African self, including music, dance, pageantry, ceremony. What is he saying over here? I think I mentioned all of those things. Okay, costumes, the repetition. Okay, these are all things that affirm and help to build the the self through ritual. For example, to dance certain African dances, they're able to remember the tribal ancestral part of the self by feeling as the ancestors felt, and knowing their experiences by the ritualistic or symbolic reliving of some aspect of their experience. So even in plays, when, for example, in schools, when our children are engaged in plays, that the parts that they play are either confirming or denying their tribal ancestral aspects of their self. So if you are playing, you're in a play and you're playing or you're representing or you're just showcasing someone else's culture or cultural personalities, you are in essence building or helping to build someone else's self. And conversely, you are neglecting or ignoring your own tribal ancestral self. Okay. So for example, to dance certain African dances that ancestors might have danced stimulates the collective memories in ways that words and descriptions could never do. For example, to dance certain African dances that ancestors might have danced stimulates the collective memory in ways that words and descriptions could never do. And in my head, I'm thinking sometimes if we do carry genetic memory, of our ancestors, and we are moving in the same way, would this not, I'm sure this would stimulate some form of memory or would unlock something in these dances. So these dances and these things that we do, these rituals, are very important. I didn't even know about this stuff till I started doing my homework. Okay, and so now I'm gonna take the African self a little bit more seriously, and I wouldn't just neglect it or kind of look at it as primitive or native. No, I'm gonna take it very seriously. Okay, let's carry on. For example, to dance certain African dances that ancestors might have danced stimulates the collective memory in ways that words and descriptions could never do. Singing certain songs and responding to traditional rhythms helps to revive portions of the experience that ancestors who had Singing certain songs and responding to traditional rhythms helps to revive portions of the experience that ancestors who sang those same songs and listened to those rhythms. The reconstruction of the atmosphere of suffering or joy that the ancestors experienced is another way that a ritual can restore the memory of the ancestors and bring forth this component of the self. Growing numbers of African Americans have made pilgrimages to the slave dungeons in West Africa, where the captured Africans were retained while waiting to be shipped to America. And we can see many videos of our brothers and sisters who have gone to, for example, Elmina in Ghana, and they have literally broken down, okay? And, and people say that you probably don't think that's going to happen to you when you go there, but then when you go there, you just get overtaken, or people talk about having mysterious, not even mysterious, but just having experiences when they go to like ancient Egypt and see the pyramids, or go to places where we've been held, like the Elmina Castle, for example, and it just triggers something and they just can't explain it, and these things sometimes just take over their bodies and they're like, whoa, okay. So even reenacting some of these dances and some of these plays and some of these things are forms of ritual. Not bad, not Pavlovian, conditioned, associated ritual, which we've been taught. No, just ritual as a word, not a good or bad. This is beyond good and bad. This is just the word as it is, fact, object. Just the word ritual. Go look up, not how we feel about the word ritual, just the word ritual in itself. It's not a bad thing, okay? So we need to, again, this is why I'm saying that when you are learning, or when you cannot ignore the wider social reality, okay, the present state of condition, you just cannot ignore it, okay? You have to take all of that into consideration as well. Let's get back into it. So the reconstruction of the atmosphere of suffering or joy that the ancestors experienced is another way that a ritual can restore the memory of the ancestors and bring forth this component of the self. Growing numbers of African Americans have made pilgrimages to the slave dungeons in West Africa, where the captured Africans were retained while waiting to be shipped to America. The most famous of these sites are Gorée Island in Senegal and Elmina and Cape Coast Castle in Ghana, or I had this castle, but Elmina and Cape Coast in Ghana. And it's probably not a castle, it's a dungeon. Now, the ability to go into these structures, smell the stench, feel the heat, and relive the fear and pain that was endured in these places, replays the ancestral tragedy of these places. This experience is not unlike the tribal ritual of the Jewish people who have spent billions of dollars constructing Jewish Holocaust museums around the world and sponsoring tours and rituals of remembering at the sites of concentration camps in Europe. This reliving of the deadly experience of the Jewish Holocaust is an example of Jewish people engaging in an educational ritual that makes them aware of a component of their tribal ancestral self. Do not ever let anyone ever tell you that you remembering your ancestors or remembering that our ancestors were enslaved is somehow negative. Don't you let anyone ever tell you that. Yeah, we were enslaved. We're not slaves. Well, okay, we are slaves still. We are slaves because we never overcame the slavery experience, but that is another video for another topic. But our ancestors were transformed into slaves, okay? And because of that experience, we were cut off from our cultural and our indigenous heritage, okay? And ever since that point, we've been trying to regain that, okay? But we haven't fully been able to regain that, okay? So on our path or on our journey to regain or to rebuild who we are, we cannot let anyone psych us into saying, oh, you know, don't talk about this slave stuff or don't talk about this black stuff. No, I'm going to talk about it